Welcome to Just One Thing. It is August 15th, which I have just realized is my parents' anniversary, so I'll be making a phone call after this. And yeah, welcome. We are tonight going to tackle a little bit overwhelm, which has been kind of a recurring issue that has been coming up in lots of our office hours and in conversations with people. And it seems like particularly at this time of year, there's a lot of extra things that pop out of the woodwork, family visits and vacations and, you know, all kinds of stuff going on, kids if they're at home or out of school. And so just generally kind of ups the ante on the distraction side of things. So we are going to talk a little bit about like, how do you filter through all the noise and narrow down to some actually important stuff? And then also we had a pre-existing request from Alyssa of like, how do you make yourself get back on track with the stuff that you should be doing? So like when you get knocked out by one of those distractions, how do you kind of refocus your attention and keep it from being like a bigger and bigger and bigger gap between that distraction piece and the refocus piece? So yeah, that's kind of where we're going tonight. But I would like to start off with maybe take a second and just think about if there's anything in particular that you're feeling overwhelmed with at the moment. So just anything that feels like it's piling up or out of control, or a particular area that you would like to focus on for this next little bit. It does not have to be writing necessarily. It can be if that's your focus, but sometimes life gets out of hand and then we have to control that before we can get back into the actual writing space and creative mode. So wherever that is for you is all good. Welcome, Bonnie. We are, as our first bit, we are just looking at if there's any particular area that's feeling overwhelming for you right now that you want to kind of tackle as your personal case study as we go through this evening. And Bonnie's still alive, but doing eye things after surgery. So we're glad you're here. Do whatever you got to do. And you can always catch up after by video if you need to revisit some of this. So some of the things that are coming up, we've got revisions. Can you clarify for me, Alyssa, is there anything in particular that feels overwhelming about that, or like any specific angle on that that's a struggle at the moment?
I guess it just feels like it's never going to be done.
Yeah, okay. The endlessness, fair.
Getting more things that need fixing.
Yeah.
It just goes further and further from finished.
Right. Okay, and Donna, so conflict between earning income and writing what pulls me. Yeah, so that's a sort of a practical versus passion thing, tug of war, we'll say, over your time and attention and energies. And
I want Jenny's husband.
He's a good one.
You're not allowed to say that on recording.
Oh, he is a good one. So there's that. Okay. And any like particular area or sticky point at the moment that you want to focus on, or just like?
No, just generally. I mean, I don't want to give a laundry list of all the things, but
Yeah, no, fair. Okay. And are you Jennifer or Cora?
Cora's good.
Okay. So what you're saying, release prep and email. Okay. So by email, do you mean like processing incoming emails, or do you mean like your newsletter list, like email outgoing?
No, actually just processing incoming emails. Like it's the first thing I let go. So when I get overwhelmed with everything else, I just stop answering emails, and then I start getting, frantic emails.
Right.
I do have to say, by doing the ignoring, that things do just go away. I get far fewer emails from people than I used to because they gave up. But yeah, I would like a better system.
Yeah.
And with the releases, I feel like after 33, 34 releases, I should actually have like it down. And I feel like instead it's getting worse instead of getting better, and I'm doing less instead of more, and never feel like I really know what I'm doing.
Okay. Marianne, quantity versus quality and writing versus business. Okay. Can you like briefly expand on that for me? So,
well, it's time management, but it's also different parts of my brain at war with each other. So I don't find that I can do both things, you know, in an organized fashion or properly if I'm juggling back and forth. I don't schedule, I don't do lists. I'm sort of all or nothing. And yet I feel pulled to do, I don't know, I guess the noisiest thing. So creation suffers, and then when I'm creating, everything else just falls around and crashes. So
right.
I don't know if I will ever be able to do those things, you know, effectively. And I know it's like systems and maybe delegation, but it's, you know, that's where the overwhelm comes in, is just feeling like you can't do it all.
Well, and feeling maybe like you have to do all of it all the time, which is maybe like, it's that, you know, adjusting those sliders, like they all can't be up at the same time because there's a finite amount of energy. It's like, I actually plugged in the air conditioner, the fan, and the iron yesterday and blew a circuit and everything shut down in our house. So,
yeah, I think I blew a circuit.
Okay, so that's pretty much, right? Like we have a finite amount of power running through our bodies. We have only so much juice to work with. And you plug too many things into too many outlets and boom, down it goes. So yeah. Alyssa.
I feel like something I've been trying to work on balancing lately is like being happy with who I am and what I've done, while also wanting to set goals to be better and do better, and how to balance those two things. Because it feels like if I'm happy with what I've done, then I'm not pushing myself to do the next thing.
Right.
If I'm like speaking badly to myself to try to push myself into something, then I'm making myself unhappy, and trying to balance that.
Yeah. Okay. Jenny, you have self-imposed deadlines, so done by Surrey, and to think
the other part was response to Donna.
Right, yes, he was the high school boyfriend who got reinstated much later, so that's awesome. Perfect romance novel, there you go. Okay, and Bonnie, do you have anything in particular that is feeling overwhelming at the moment?
Exercise, actually. I can't seem to fit exercise into my day.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So we have some things identified, which is an excellent first step. Second step, take a minute and just think about where is the resistance or the extra coming from? Because like in most of these cases, this is kind of a volume issue, right? Like there's too much of something that's preventing the something else, or leading to that feeling of all the things and then nothing is happening because it's just too overwhelming. So think about what are the roles that you have right now that are involved in this complex tapestry of this stuff. Does that make sense? So like if it's me as an author, me as a marketer, me as a wife, me as a person who needs to be healthy, like as the body caretaker, what roles do you have in your life right now that are kind of in the mixture? And if you're comfortable, you can drop some into the chat. Okay. Okay. So switch gears slightly and think about now, what are some of the values that you have? Like, what are some of the things that are important to you in your life? So it might be you value being generous, you value helping people, maybe you value like creative time. Like what are the important pieces that you've identified as things that make you sort of happy, satisfied, parts of your life that are important in that way?
Can you say that again? I was typing, not listening.
Yes. So think about, what are some of the values that you have? Yeah, like Alyssa's got there: independence, strength, freedom, loyalty, creativity. Like, what are some of the things that are integral to who you are, how you want to live your life, things that matter to you? Welcome, Janine. Nice picture. I'm glad the pictures are back. That's fun. Okay, so for Janine, who just joined us, we're just taking a minute to define our roles in our life. So, and I feel like you might not be able to see the stuff that's in the chat before you get here on Zoom. So roles are things like, you know, author, business owner, parent, like anything like that that you feel is kind of contributing to the load that's on your plate in your world at the moment. And then the second piece is, what are some values that you have? So certain things that are an important key piece of your life. So like being happy, kind, organized, strong work ethic, a loving mom and wife, intelligent. And if it's easier to think about, you can think about, how would you want other people to describe you? And that's often a way to identify our values, the things that we value kind of from the outside in. Oh, and we lost Janine. Okay. Too much, too fast. I'm out. Okay, so what do we got here? Lots of good stuff. Good mom, supportive wife, creative, but also self-sufficient, and a money earner, which I've given up for this dream of writing for the moment. Okay, so that's a big one, is when we shift those roles or we transition, right? And kind of balancing those pieces. So some values from Marianne: authenticity, connection, creativity, honesty, kindness, productivity, responsibility, and contribution. Very nice. Okay, so why are we doing this? When we were here to get a solution to a specific task, why are you taking us down this garden path? Well, the reason is because often that overwhelm or resistance or whatever is coming from kind of a misalignment between the tasks and our immediate goals and what our values might state, right? And so there is that tug that happens between, like, I really want to read this book, but I know I should be writing my words or finishing those revisions or whatever, right? Like, that's something that you had mentioned before, Alyssa, is like, how do I get myself out of that and back on track when I have those disruptions or like get kind of sucked right into something like that? For Donna, like, you know, you're in a situation where, you know, you're feeling, it seems like, okay, there's a certain responsibility here to do the stuff that will pay and to like be contributing and developing that side of things. But then the passion projects are over here just calling, you know, and tugging at your soul a little, wanting you to come out and play and winning. Yeah, exactly. And so then that's creating some internal stress, and you're not feeling good about either, you know, no matter which you're choosing, it's always feeling like the wrong one. Yeah, I call that study guilt from being a student, where like, it doesn't matter how much you do, you could always still be doing more. And there's that constant, I just remember that from university, there was no done ever. And that was, it's kind of that like should want battle, which is always a thing. Okay, so what we do need to do though is actually get at a little bit of why. So looking at that alignment piece just a little bit. So Bonnie, can I use you as an example to like work this through, like a little case study? Maybe.
Sorry, yes, and I was
Okay.
typing because what you were saying was already making me think of things.
Okay. Good. So so what we would like to do next, or what I would like for us to do next, is to take a look at these things you value versus the things you're spending your time on. So can you take a minute and just jot down a few things that are occupying, say, 80 to 90% of your time? Okay. Do we need more time? How are we feeling about that? Okay. Now, the next bit, I have a visual aid here. It's a very complex diagram, you can see. So clean page probably. Make 4 squares on it. That's step 1. And step 2 is stuff I like. And then stuff I don't like. Okay. And then on the vertical axis here, what someone else could do and what I must do, like what only I can do. So like only I can write my books, for example. So I would put that in here, and it's something I like doing, so it goes in this category. Cleaning my house, solidly someone else could do it and I don't like it, so it gets firmly in this box. So think about that list of things you just made, of all of this stuff that you're responsible to, and think about which quadrants those things belong in, and then put them there for a second. You're not committing to anything here, so don't let your little subconscious that's like, you really could do the housekeeping, like, don't let that voice in yet. It's not time.
What about a guilty pleasure that you don't like doing, but you keep doing, like social media? I wouldn't say it's something I like doing, but I keep picking up my phone, so obviously part of me likes it.
Right. Okay, well, maybe we need like a separate sheet for those. I don't know. Those didn't enter into the equation in this last few times I've done this exercise.
Well, no, but I agree with that, because it's like what
Yeah.
Bonnie said. I was going to walk this morning before writing Sprint, and I got up in time to do it, but I looked at my phone and I ended up, I probably spent half an hour reading this stupid thing about the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
No,
So-
I've Gone with the Wind, but
Okay, so for right now, I want you to, on a separate piece of paper, write down anything you think falls into that category, like behaviors that are interfering with stuff or having a negative impact on you. You sort of skipped ahead to the next thing, but if they're coming to mind anyway, then go ahead and just put them on a different sheet as they pop up, but they don't get on the grid.
So like addiction.
Yeah. Give me a little wave when you think you're kind of downloaded all that stuff onto your page. I'm not sure how long everybody wants. There's a lot of stuff that can go in those boxes. It can be fairly an endless exercise, but okay. So, and you can absolutely keep going on those boxes after. We're gonna like actually hop to something else and then come back to them, but I wanted you to do this part before we get distracted with the other bits. So, okay. The reason that we're doing this is so that we can come back to it and filter it after we do this next exercise. How many people have ever tried to make a vision statement for your life or for your writing career? Cora?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Anything you can tell us about that process, or like?
Well, you know what, actually, oddly enough, that is exactly what I'm struggling with right now, which is at the basis of all of the struggles.
Right.
So yeah, I put it away. There's actually this lovely book called The Right Brain Business Plan. And so she had a bunch of steps to go through that kind of brought you down to finding what your key words were and then putting them together, to make a nice, statement and goal thing. And the problem that I'm, dealing with right now is it's shifting, and I'm stuck. I haven't made the shift. I'm not ready for the shift. The shift is coming whether I'm ready for it or not. So, but it is great when you've got your statement and it's on point. It's really, really helpful, and I always keep it up on my wall and refer to it, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm gonna walk everybody through kind of putting one together a little bit for each of us, and it'll just be a working draft as an exercise. This is not a commitment yet. You will likely need to take a little time and kind of try this on and see how it feels as you walk through your day or your week or even your month. I'm taking a course right now called the Focus Course from a guy named Sean Blanc. And he does a lot of stuff on like productivity and buffer and margin and all of these things, and kind of how to build yourself a creative life that still has space for the life part in it. And this is one of the exercises that we've been working on, is actually creating a vision statement for your life and then working kind of top down from there to make sure that all of this other stuff that's in your life is actually going to be in alignment with that. And this is maybe the 30th time I've done this exercise in my life. I've done a lot of like retreats and leadership stuff and whatever, and this is something that kind of cycles back, but it's almost always different. And when you go through like a big transitional period, it can be a lot more different than you're expecting, actually. And it's fascinating once you have it like written down and you have it in front of you, and then you can use it as a filter for all the other things. It's shocking how some of the stuff we've been seriously wrestling with suddenly is not a wrestle at all. It's a very obvious and easy decision to make. So, and that can be as simple as, do I want to read this book or do I want to write these pages? Like, it's interesting how much of a powerful filter that becomes. It's like each action or each choice or each opportunity that comes that you have to choose to say yes or no to, or kind of how to engage with it. You have a filter now. You have a set of criteria. Does this help me fulfill my life's vision? And it's a big thing, but you can do it in chunks. And so having a writer vision is also very helpful. So we tackled job descriptions last time as a way to kind of incorporate for ourselves as a writer some of these other things. So like one of our job roles and responsibilities is to keep our body working properly so that we can continue to do our jobs, right? So we had several people posted in the group with their job descriptions that they had come up with, and we had, qualifications you needed and what does your job look like, what are your responsibilities, all that kind of stuff. And so today's kind of the why piece. That job description helps you set some specific goals, like this position is in charge of managing social media and producing new content and, connecting with readers and all of these things. But this is the like, why are we doing this at all? And kind of how do we want to frame that, or what do we want to use as that choice making filter as we decide what goes from a job description into an action plan, right? So often we end up with this huge action plan with 500 items in it and all of this stuff to do. And we forget to ask, why are we doing it? I mean, we're doing it because somebody said this is what you do to get ahead, but is it actually aligned with our version of what our author self is going to be like, or our version of what our life wants to look like? So, okay, so what I'd like you to do, I have like a little template that we can kind of use as a starting place. So, okay. And I'm going to maybe I'll type it in here. You guys can all see it then. In my roles as a blank, I want to express, impart, and exemplify. And I'm borrowing this directly from Sean's wording. So, but I know it's an exercise that's been similarly done in an awful lot of places. Okay. Okay, so in my roles as a XYZ, I want to express, impart, and exemplify the values of XYZ by, and this last one is some actions. Like in my role as a partner, I want to express, impart, and exemplify the values of compassion and encouragement and fun or whatever, by, you know, making sure I have a weekly date night with my husband, or whatever it is that you think is going to be like a manifestation of those values. So something kind of actionable. So if you want to start with it as like a writer self, if it's easier to focus down, then go for it. Or if it's like you're not sure where your writing is fitting in your life right now and you want to go higher level, then that's okay too. You pick whether you want to zoom in or zoom out.
And Crystal, are you suggesting we do several, like for all the different roles we came up?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can do several if it's easier to like break them out at first, and then you can decide. So if you're doing specific, like you can have a vision statement for each area of your life, if that's helpful. So like creativity, physical stuff, financial stuff, emotional stuff, right? You can have each of their own areas can have their own vision statement. And then you might see similarities that turn out to be part of your vision statement for your life overall, but it is good to, yes, do them separately as a starting place.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a TV in the back, but like a couple of times I'm kind of my values and my buy are like I'm writing something as a value, and then I realize no, that's how you do that thing. It's kind of a funny confusion I'm having. Like,
can you give us an example?
Yeah. For instance, as a coach, so with the people the woman I'm doing development edits with, I want to impart and exemplify the values of, and I was trying to think of the right word, like support and encouragement, but I realize it's by being encouraging, right? So it's that, like, yeah. And it also came up with writer around, on Medium as well, so yeah.
Would the value be leadership or wisdom or something like that?
Empowerment.
Yeah.
Actually, I like, yeah, but where does is empowerment a value? It's not really, but empowering them by empowering them.
Yeah. I mean, it could be it's contribution really is the value. Like, you value making a contribution to other people's dreams, goals, whatever, or yeah. Okay. I don't remember, Donna, were you at the essence versus form workshop that Laura did at my house? Okay. It's an easy cheat for any of us who did that workshop, because we figured out our essences, and sometimes it's easier to think about it as an essence of something instead of a value, because it kind of puts a slightly different spin on it. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. So nurturing or nurture, that's a great one, Bonnie. Yeah, nurturing. Yeah. All right. So how about anybody else feeling volunteerish, who wants to like share anything about that experience or what you've kind of come up with? If you want to bounce something off people and pick their brains, we have good brains here to pick.
I had trouble filling in one of the blanks. So if I make a distinction between, sorry, I've got to flip to my notes here. If I make a distinction between my role as a creative writer and my role as an author, then in the little paragraph, I want to express, impart, and exemplify the values of, where am I here? Excellence, strategic thinking, accountability, fiscal responsibility by, and I sort of can't fill in that blank because it's too many things. It's too many things, and yet I feel incompetent sort of at all of them. So how do I
And I feel like some of those maybe aren't values. They are actually what goes in the by section. So like, right.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
So like being fiscally responsible is like, I want to be, you want to be embodying the value of like professionalism or whatever by, and then, having these other words that describe the types of actions you would take. So often it takes a while to dig down deep enough to actually find the essence or the value behind something. We're very, generally, we're very lost in the external expressions of things because it's easy to identify those, right? It's like, okay, well, I value, being on time, and I value, showing up and being a good like critique partner, whatever. You can put all of these things that you value, but they aren't the value behind it. I mean, the value behind that might be respect, right? And that's external expressions of those values. And so yeah, I mean, if you just keep brainstorming as many words as you can kind of think of until one feels right, or if you look for an umbrella word that encompasses the 5 things you wrote, because usually if you have like 3 to 5 things, it means you're getting there, but you haven't found the thing that connects them all together yet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A lot easier time writing what I wanted to do versus what the value was that supported.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are hard. We don't often actually analyze that level of why in our lives, or like what is it underneath all of this activity we're busy doing, right? And it's interesting that some of the things that we feel are tugging can also maybe be traced back to a conflict with what we value and the external tasks that are happening, right? And we might totally value like financial independence, but growing this creative stuff and letting that side expand may require that we dial that back a fair bit for a time, right? And so that is an interesting sort of, once you know where some of this resistance is coming from, like you don't necessarily need to, exterminate it. You just need to have a conversation with it so that you understand where it's coming from and, negotiate with yourself a way around that, whether it's, acknowledging that, okay, I have all of these values and you've had a big turn for a really long time and now it's your turn to give someone else a shot. And so, it seems a bit silly, but if you've done any reading about like family systems therapy kind of stuff, like we have all these little voices in our heads that are kind of representing different things. Some of those are family values that were passed to us from our parents as, kids and young adults and adults. Some of it is, societal values that are sort of handed to us through media and our experiences with the outside world, all that stuff. But then there's the things that actually matter to us, and those are different, right? And hard to get through all the noise. But okay, anybody else want to share anything that jumped out at them?
One thing that jumped out at me was I was going through my roles, and this all makes sense, but I got to, in my role as a social media director, and the next words that came were, I don't want to do anything. And so I think that's really the truth, and it's something that I've been I don't know, I think that encapsulates the problem for that particular thing. Is I either have to figure out how to make a shift so that I enjoy it, or I have to say I don't need to be on social media personally. Like I have an assistant who does all kinds of social media for me, but I feel like if I am not personally there speaking to readers myself, that I'm a bad author.
Right.
So I'm going to have to do something about that.
Yeah. What if you demoted yourself? What if you were not the director? What if you were the social media employee and your role was to show up and do a specific task on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think that's like it's how minimal and specific can I get so that it's really like maybe just scheduled in. Yeah, I like that.
And so one of the things is we get stuck in these either or propositions, and it's all of this or all of that. But there's often a way to kind of not skirt the issue, but like a way to combine those two things, or find a third thing that's not either of those, but will actually fulfill what needs fulfilling. But because we're thinking it's this or that, we're not seeing this third option up here. And sometimes purposely dialing down certain things, like purposely choosing that you're going to do this other thing less well or whatever in order to ramp up some of the other areas. When it's a purposeful choice, it's not a failure, it's a reprioritization, right? And often it's only temporary. It's just for a period of time so that we can get the other thing. Okay, I'm a bad XYZ. How do we stop this when I know I wouldn't think someone else was bad for the same thing? Okay. Well, if you want a really literal suggestion of an exercise to try, is write on a piece of paper what that thought is, and slip my name or Donna's name or somebody else's name into it that you know you wouldn't say that about. I'm just assuming you're only speaking nice things about Donna and I, but really pull from whoever you want. But choosing someone else's name to put in there and then actually making a switch, right? Like, I think you'll find you have trouble completing those thoughts, and just the exercise of doing that makes you aware that you wouldn't. Does that make sense? It's like, imagine that little game show thing is like turning and the block goes to a different name. And then you probably won't be comfortable sitting with it anymore. And you'll have to not have that thought because it won't jive with how you are as a friend and a community member and a person who interacts with others. It will feel very uncomfortable for you. And your brain will not want to do that after a few of those. You're gonna like basically train it away from those thoughts. It's like every time you squirt your dog with a water bottle when they're barking and they just eventually stop barking, you're going to get your brain to stop barking bad things at you. Okay. Yeah, Donna, you're a terrible person for just like choking right up there. No, can't do it.
The
Okay.
great irony is that I've written things where I truly am, but
okay, so now that we have some of these at least draft statements, you're going to want to go off and kind of play around with these, but I think go back to your list, and you know how we had done our quadrants of responsibilities you have and things you need to take care of. Think about some of these things in the roles that have come up that maybe didn't make that list the first time round. So like, if you value in your role of being a good mom that you would be phoning your child once a week or whatever that is, assuming they don't live with you, then add that to your list. Is it a thing you enjoy? Is it a thing only you can do? Well, yeah, right? So squeak in a few of those other things that have maybe come up that are more in line with what we're thinking are our important values, not just the busy work that instantly pops to mind when we make one of those lists, but the stuff that matters more. And that could be reading your book, and only you can do that.
now I know, because I have an insider scoop, that you have a brand new, very, very fabulous vision statement, which if you shared it, I'm sure 7 of us would all say, I'll take that vision statement.
That's why I haven't shared it yet. I want you to write down your things first, and then
but yours doesn't follow that model. So is there another step that changes?
Yeah, so it's the next step. Yeah.
Do we do that tonight, or do we have to wait?
I will do a mini version so that you have something to think about. I won't get everybody to finish theirs and share them, but I'll get you to start thinking about yours. Yeah. You're just jumping ahead because you're a smart kid.
Because I saw the cheater's notes.
You did. All right. Did you add some things? Were there a few things that popped up after that that weren't maybe on the original list? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good.
I forgot what we're doing. What are we doing?
You're adding to your what you must do and what you only you can do, what other people can do kind of list. Yeah. With some things that may have come up in your exploration of how you want to be those different roles and how you want to embody those different values. You can keep working on that later. That's all good. The purpose of this is to make it very clear which things you could ask for help for, delegate, hire out, think about making adjustments. So if a high priority is your physical health, and if there is no time in the day or no energy in the day to make that a priority, then shifting those tasks a little bit. I'm just going to mute you, Marianne. Then you can shift those tasks. Okay, if you must do it all, then we'll have a separate conversation about that. But the reason for that is you've got to make a little bit of space to be able to shift things around to fit with those values, if that makes sense. And once you have a vision statement for each of those roles, it's really useful to go back and kind of try to make a vision statement for your life as a whole. Because we sometimes hold on to roles we don't really need anymore. Like, are you the president of an organization, or are you, super active momming when really you could dial it back because your kid's grown up now? Or, our roles shift and change, and the behaviors that get put into patterns don't necessarily keep up with those changes. And so re-examining the roles we have and deciding if we need to keep doing that role at the level we've been doing it, like we talked about with Cora, like, is there a way to demote yourself or to promote yourself to the point of high-level CEO decisions, but not actually doing the grunt work, right? Like, where can you shift the external stuff that goes with that role and that value? So I did, and like I said, I've done this exercise a lot of times, but this was the first time that I think I actually hit what I wanted, like, overall, not just for a specific area. And I did use my core essences, which I had identified through another whole series of workshops, which for me are freedom, exploration, beauty, creativity, and community. So those were kind of the 5 values that I identified through a lot of other words going through all those roles. But it was like, if I look at all of the roles that I have and the things that I do in those roles, and when am I happy in those roles or unhappy, like, what are the characteristics that are required to make me feel good about those things that I'm doing and those responsibilities that I have. And it all kind of comes back to those 5 things. So the more of those 5 things that are present, the happier I am in that particular role or responsibility. So my vision statement, I want the freedom to explore my full potential and to live and love steeped in beauty, creativity, and community. So for me, trying to, like, reset my life a little bit right now and rebuild a home and rebuild all our physical environments, as well as the sort of virtual and emotional environments and everything else. I wanted to make sure that I had a sense of where I even wanted to go. So, pulling back from a lot of things and then giving myself the freedom to make some choices before I redid those lists. So I know, like, a few people, Marianne included, we talked about this at our last office hours, we're struggling with these huge lists of things we should be doing. Like, Cora, for your launches, same deal. Like, those lists just get bigger and bigger and harder to face with every kind of incarnation that they have. And so when I went back and looked at what was I originally planning to do for August, I looked at those lists, and then I looked at what was on my page in front of me, and I was like, yeah, 80% of that could actually come right off. Like, it is because I feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And, like, actually, if I chose not to do any social media and that hurt my sales a little bit, do I actually care? Yeah, turns out I don't. So, looking at it from a personal responsibility side of things, like, how am I going to feel if I just say no to this, right? Are the consequences going to actually make you feel worse than feeling bad about not doing this all of the time? Like, what if you just cut it off the list, even for a month, and just said, like, for the next 4 weeks, I'm on sabbatical from that position of director of social media. Like, you know, and I mean, everybody knows their own business best. So like, if that's actually going to crash your business, okay, don't do that, or hire somebody. But if you're looking at maintaining a life as an entrepreneur and a person at the same time, and you're trying to balance all of these things, it may be that they don't all happen all of the time. And so if you know that there are 6 months of the year, maybe every second month you could focus on social media, or, you know, maybe you have a great launch focus during those 3 months of the year, but the rest of the time that stuff is just quiet. It's just non-existent. Like, I think giving yourself the permission to have seasons and cycles and not to do everything all the time, then you can turn that dial up and down, right? You can adjust when it's going to have the most impact. So thinking about, okay, what you value, and then the thing you're trying to do, and looking at the connections. So let's say it is a book launch. Out of your values, which were the parts that really spoke to you? Is it directly connecting to readers? Because in that case, answering your emails is your absolute straight line to that, assuming that they're reader incoming emails as opposed to, you know, random newsletters or something. But being able to decide which of the 100 tasks, sorry about the sirens, just pause for a second here. Welcome to downtown. Nope, just getting louder. Okay. Good. Just sit on that for a second.
It's not too bad.
Okay. So yeah, thinking about what elements of that can you connect to your film? What are they doing? It's like every time I go to say a word, whoop, and then they stop. Okay. Clearly, the universe says I've talked enough. But yeah, basically, that is your homework, is to think about how you're going to tie those pieces together. And Alyssa, I know it's not like directly answering your question of how to pull yourself back, but I guess my question is actually, do you need to pull yourself back? Like, if what is your happiness in that moment and a value of you as a person is having created a life that lets you have the time to do that, right? Like, it's, where are your priorities going to sit? And I don't know if that will help or not help at all to have kind of defined what your vision is for yourself, but it may include those reading breaks, right? Like, I often find if I'm truly avoiding something, just making myself do it is not always good. Like, why am I avoiding it in the first place is really a question to think about. So maybe just for you as a separate homework assignment, just keep a little journal. Like, if you're finding you get distracted and not going back, just write about that. Each time it happens, like, what was it you got distracted from? What was it that distracted you or called you to that other thing? And then how did you feel about that? And just actually see if it's A, happening as often as you think, and B, kind of what the connecting threads are. Once you journal a few times about it, you might see that there's some recurring consistencies. Okay. So how do we feel about all that?
Yeah. Good.
A little bit good, hopefully. A little bit of
clarity.
Something to do. Yeah. As an action to take, I mean, ponder this whole statement thing, but pick just one thing that you can do in the next like 48 hours that's going to feel like you are living more in your values in one of your roles. Just one thing. If you want to, you can share if it's like PG-13 rating, I don't know. Or I can turn off the camera before we report in, whatever.
Well, I think for me, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to start like gathering images with, without even worrying about them, and just start sort of slapping them up on the wall. So over the next few months, as I'm getting to the point where I'm finishing up what I'm, already committed to doing, I can see what am I being drawn to and how do I need to, change
Yep.
what I'm writing about.
Yeah. Nice. And that's a really good way. Like if you're looking to narrow down what your values are, you can just get a pack of note cards and just write a single word on them and just like put them out on your desk or put them on a wall or stick them on your fridge with magnets, whatever, and just keep adding until you have a whole bunch. And then you start grouping them together because you'll find they fall together naturally. Like those are the sort of bits and pieces, and you can kind of narrow it down that way. But if you don't worry about picking right away, then you're likely to generate enough to get a better sample, right? Like we wouldn't give if we're doing stats, we wouldn't give a number that's an average of something out of two things, right? You need a few to really get a sense of how that's working. So generating a whole bunch without committing to any, and like try them on. And if you say you put 3 or 5 at the top, and those are the ones that feel most right, then you just keep swapping them out. Whichever one feels better, you trade it, right? And then you're shuffling until it feels really good with what's there. Leslie, we recorded it all, so you can go back. The recording should be up in I'm not going to post it till the morning, actually, because one of my things is to go and hang out with my husband for the next 2 hours before we fall asleep. I will post it in the morning, though, and you can tackle it then when you're nice and fresh and do all the activities along with the group. Several people have said when they watch the videos, they find themselves fixing their hair because they feel like they're right there with us. So I'm thinking that's a good thing. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. We have another one of these themed sessions is going to be next month. We do one a month. So I'm just checking the September date so you can all put it on your calendar. It is September 12th, Thursday, September 12th. And I am taking requests if there is a particular topic that people are struggling with, or whatever you think is an area you'd like to focus on for the next little bit, then you can send me a note and I will work that in. And if not, I have a little kit full of all kinds of interesting things, and I will pull something out of there that seems appropriate in the moment. So either way, but let me know if there's something you really want to tackle, and we will. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing you report into the Just One Thing group when you have accomplished your thing you're going to go do right now in the next 48 hours.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.